Hello viewers, welcome to AAU Talks here on AAU TV, and my name is Kwesi Sam. Today's show is dedicated to the African Union Commission. We are looking at the Agenda 2063, the role of the young people on the continent. And I have in the studio 3 wonderful young guests who are going to do justice to the topic, Agenda 2063, and the role of young people on the continent. Before we start the discussion, and then before I introduce my guest, we want to take the African Union's anthem. And from there, I will introduce my guest, and then the show begins. Stay tuned.
Let us all unite and celebrate together the victories won for our liberation. Let us dedicate ourselves to rise together to defend our liberty and unity. Oh, sons and daughters of Africa, flesh of the sky and flesh of the sky, let us make Africa the tree of life. Let us all unite and sing together to uphold the bonds that frame our destiny, our destiny. Let us dedicate ourselves to fight together for lasting peace and justice, honor. Oh, sons and daughters of Africa, flesh of the sun and flesh of the sky, let us make Africa the tree of life. Let us all unite and toil together to give the best we have to Africa, the cradle of mankind and fount of culture, our pride and hope at break of dawn. Oh, sons and daughters of Africa, flesh of the sun and flesh of the sky, let us make Africa the tree of life. Let us all unite.
That was an inspiring anthem of the African Union, and I believe that I know definitely a lot of us is the first time of we listening to the African Union's anthem. Most of us may not have heard it before, and so you are just privileged to hear the African Union's anthem on the AAU Talks here on the AAU TV. Before we went for the anthem, I told you I was going to introduce my guest to you, and then we start the show. Now, the first guest to be introduced on the show this afternoon is Mr. Schenineda Ankoma, who happens to be a project officer here at the Association of African Universities. Mr. Ankoma, you are welcome.
Thank you.
How are you doing?
I'm fine.
Are you sure?
I'm fine.
Great. All right. The second person to be introduced is one of the lovely females that we have here at the Association of African Universities, in the person of Miss Irene Addai, and she is also a project officer here at the Association of African Universities. How are you doing, Miss Addai?
I'm fine.
Are you sure?
Yes, and thank you for having me.
I can see the expression on your face that you are so much excited.
Of course. It's Africa.
It's Africa.
Yeah.
Excited. We have our last guest, and not the least, in the person of Mr. Samuel Japan, and he is also a project officer here at the Association of African Universities. You are welcome, Mr. Japan.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Kwesi.
How are you also?
I am good. I'm very well.
Great. So this is a happy day for us, and most especially as Africans and young people. And you'd bear with me that somewhere around 2013, the African Union celebrated its Golden Jubilee. That was 50 years. And one of the key things that came out of the 50th anniversary was the establishment or the Agenda 2063 that sought to give a roadmap or a development agenda for the continent for the next 50 years. And I believe that a lot of us here may have heard it before, or may have gotten opportunity to go through the entire document. The document has 7 aspirations, and that is what we are going to discuss one after the other and see if, as young people on the continent, we have any place in the Agenda 2063. I tell my friends that the agenda is for the next 50 years, but I'm not too sure how many young people are aware of this agenda. Mr. Japan, how many young people do you think are aware of the Agenda 2063?
Well, comparatively, looking at the SDGs and then Agenda 2063, not a lot of people know about these agenda, even though they are Africans and even though they've gone through the system, through our educational system and all that. This could be that there's no awareness or publicity of this agenda, and also our schools do not also focus on such agenda. I think those who are doing courses in the development field might have an idea about it, but not into details like how somebody who is into the or in the African Youth Charter would do. Okay. So I think there's still room for improvement in terms of promotion and awareness creation.
Great. Yes. Now, 25th May was a holiday, Ms. Addai, and I was so surprised. We interviewed one student and who said, I know today's a holiday, but I don't know why it is a holiday.
Yes.
And are you surprised to hear some of these things? Africans, we know it's a holiday we are celebrating, but we don't know anything about it.
No, I don't think it's surprising because generally sensitization in Africa is very low. And when we go on the street, mostly asking questions generally pertaining about Africa, we find out that most people don't know about it. And it's how we educate our folks, it's how we educate our people on the continent. Because most times these things are seen on the internet, and looking at Africa, there are not many people who have access to those documents. So it's not surprising someone in Africa doesn't know of the African Union holiday.
Mr. Ankoma, are you surprised?
Okay, I'm not surprised. You know, in reference to the first question you asked Samir Japan, he said that he made reference to the fact that we have SDGs. They are all, you know, parts that has been carved for the next generation, and then the Africa we want. Looking at the publicity surrounding these two documents, you can see that SDGs are far ahead of the Agenda 2063, mainly because if you look at the SDGs, there are sponsored programs around the SDGs, but then it's not, you know, the same for Agenda 2063. So if you look at it, I wouldn't be surprised that we have most of the young people not aware of the Agenda 2063.
Okay, thank you very much, gentlemen and lady. Now, let's look at the agenda itself and how we can help our younger generation. Because whether we like it or yes, the people who crafted Agenda 2063 may not be there or may not be alive 50 years on. And it is you and I, and probably people who are younger than us, who are going to champion or spearhead the content of the agenda. What do you think must be done as a continent to ensure that the young people embrace the Agenda 2063 before we even go into the details of what the agenda talks about? Mr. Depo.
Well, for me, I would say the first aspect will be education. And our folks need to be educated about our own agenda. I'm always tempted to say that the SDGs are created for Africa, since it's normally the implementation phase is always in Africa, ignoring what we actually did or what our leaders actually sat to write for the development of our continent. So I think education and awareness creation will be good if we want to really achieve this. Looking at the fact that in 50 years' time, it is us, it is you and I who will be in the driving seats.
Okay.
Yes.
Ms. Addai, do you have anything to add?
To add more to that, when we look at the Agenda 2063, it spans for 50 years. And in 50 years, those who are in charge of the agenda will not be there. And therefore, it is necessary that the youth, those coming, would be in the known of the agenda. And so, as he already put out, there should be mass education. I think necessarily every government in Africa should make it a priority to put the agenda out. We know the aspirations. They are very good. And then if we are able to follow the aspirations, I think the Africa we want by 50 years is achievable. It's nothing new in the agenda. Okay. But since we don't know much about it, we've not put much effort into it.
Okay. So how do we ensure that the young people know much about the Agenda 2063?
Okay, Kwesi, on my way to work every day, I pass by a school, you know, on the is it taxi rank to Rolling Circle stretch. Okay. There's a school, on the wall of the school, they have all the SDG goals. They have a picture of all the SDG goals on the wall. Every day I get to the place and I look at it, I pick something out of it. Likewise, I'm sure the students in the school, they see the wall every day, they look at the goals, and then at least they pick something. You know, most of the time, if you see something all the time, it sticks one way or the other, and then you find ways to work around some of the things you see. So I'm sure that the SDG, just as how it has been publicized, we can do same for Agenda 2063. So maybe I go to a place, there's a wall, and then we have all the aspirations on the wall, infographics. I'm sure I'll be able to appreciate it, and then I'll be able to adapt it.
Brilliant submissions. But let's move a step further. What comes to mind at all when you hear of the Agenda 2063, the Africa we want? Before we go into what is in the books and what is in the document, what comes to your mind? The Africa we want. Ms. Addai, the Africa we want. What and how do you want to see Africa in the next 50 years, even before we look at the 7 aspirations?
I want the Africa where people would be in a rush to come see, where people would want to come stay without any fear, without any fear of thinking about getting malaria or dying. I want an Africa where there is peace. I want an Africa where democratically everyone can express themselves. I want an Africa where a movement of people, it's done, and then there is no restrictions. Businesses can move on. Enterprises can just form without troubles. That is the Africa we want. In my explanation, I want a perfect Africa. Africa where everything is in place. Okay. That is the Africa I want.
Is there any perfect continent?
We strive to achieve that. I think it's not far-fetched. We can get it.
I like the first grade. Yes, Mr. Ankoma, what do you have to say?
Okay.
What comes to mind? Agenda 2063, the Africa we want. What comes to mind?
Okay. We say Agenda 2063, the Africa we want. You know, it's ambitious. You know, sometimes it's kind of they've given you the opportunity to say, you know, this is what I want and that is what I get. And so, me as a youth, I want an Africa that is inclusive. Okay. You know, not limited to, you know, a particular thing, but not limited to gender, not limited to any group of people. You know, in all spheres, we want people to be represented and nobody left behind. That is Africa.
Nobody left behind. I think I like that point also. Mr. Japan?
For me, I want an Africa where we drive our growth ourselves. An Africa where our development is being pushed by ourselves and not foreign interference or be relying on aid or something. If you've watched Black Panther, I want a Wakanda Africa.
That's excellent.
Yes.
I think I already love your submissions. They are very much insightful and excellent. But let's go deeper into the 7 aspirations and let's hear from you how we think young people can fit into the agenda and how we will be able to ensure that by the next 50 years, maybe probably you'll be 77, 78. I'll meet you somewhere and then we'll remember this day. But let's look at the first aspiration. The first aspiration talks about a prosperous Africa based on inclusive growth and sustainable development. And this one, the SDGs really spans and talks about it a lot. Let me start with you, Mr. Japan.
Okay.
What can be done or what must be done to ensure that throughout the 50 years. I don't want to say that at the end of the 50 years,
Yes,
because
throughout the
growth
50,
and development
yes.
is a process. What must be done to ensure that we have a prosperous Africa where there is inclusive growth and development?
Well, looking at the current trend that we are in now, to have an inclusive growth, there is some few things that you need to look at, some few elements in the across the continent that you need to look at. One is creating employment.
Okay.
So if there is employment for the youth who are coming up, one, it will reduce crime and all that. And two, there is the need for Africa to feed itself, not relying on foreign aid and other things. So there is the need for Africa to push its own agenda. Okay. There is also the need for technology. We also need to embrace technology in Africa. And we need to respect their laws. And there's the need for Africa to trade with itself. If we really want to grow, there's no need trading with maybe China. It is important to open up or liberalize trade. But what about inter-country or international trade? Okay. So an Africa that wants to grow needs to look within. An Africa that wants to grow needs to educate its people. An Africa that wants to grow needs to employ its people.
That's excellent. Let me get to you. I think you guys are blowing my mind already. Yeah. But Ms. Addai, based on the submissions that he has given, you know, we must. The problem has always been, how do we do it? How do we ensure? He made mention of having employment for the young people on the continent, making sure that we drive our own processes. How do we get this done? Okay,
first of all, I think Africa as a continent, our main challenges are our institutions. I think we are one of the continents with the weakest institutions. If we go through the checks, we know the institutions are there, but they are not implementing what it's supposed to do. And even if they are implementing, they are war with corruption and bribery scandals. And then we don't look at the future. We always think about what we would get. So most times it is difficult to get all these things done. It is difficult to get the continent pushing forward. When you look at Ghana, when you look at Nigeria, when you look at Rwanda, it's a problem that cuts across. So until these institutions are being empowered, until stricter rules, until more education are being done to give these institutions more power to work, independent of all the arms of government that interferes in what we have, I think then we will get there. But when we have a country or a continent where everyone can meddle in any affairs, nepotism, favoritism, and everything it's going on, I don't think this would help us develop as a continent.
Ms. Addai, you have a background in international relations.
Of course.
What is so different from the other continent? What is so different? Why is it that the institutions are working, and every year, every day in Africa we talk about having a strong or stronger institutions? It looks like we have sung this rhyme over and over again, but the problem still exists. What is so different? Is it about the people? Is it about their mindset? What is it?
Thank you. When you look at the other developed countries and you look at their institutions, if you look at how they are educated, if you look at how they are set up, the mindset that they are coming with is a mindset for them to prosper. Okay. But when we are in Africa, as compared to them, you're going through hardships, you're going through problems. So immediately you get there, your mind is already set up to find more money for yourself, to find wealth for yourself.
And not to make the country better.
Yes, not to make the country better, but rather to enrich yourself. But these countries that we talked about, they have procurement standard departments that goes through everything that goes on. But here, we sit down, we do our sole sourcing for our procurement, and that doesn't work that way in those countries. They go through stricter rules, stricter regulations, and there are punishments for that if you go against it. And that doesn't work here in our continent. So if we need Africa to develop, we need to put these things in place. And we need to make sure that these policies are implemented, not just in the constitution, but implemented.
Great. inclusive growth. It means that it should be all sector approach.
Yeah.
Everybody, women, men, young people, must all come on board to ensure that we are able to chart our own development. How do we do this? Looking at the fact that you, Mr. Japan mentioned the fact that unemployment is really a bane on our continent. How do we solve this issue?
Okay, Kwesi Sam, thank you. They've all made important submissions. Let me start from Dufi's submission. She was talking about institutions that should work. You know, there is an argument. We say that, is it institutions before development or development before institutions? Do we need to develop and then we get to a point that we realize that our institutions are not working and then we question the institutions and they change? Or we develop our institutions and, you know, we also, that will lead to development. You know, that is an issue, it's a debate, but then I'm always for the fact that we need to develop our institutions side by side, our own development, so that the two will complement each other. And then touching on the sustainable development, I'm sure that Africa, you know, to achieve the goal that we set for ourselves, one key area that we need to focus on is agriculture. We are neglecting agriculture, we are sidelining agriculture, but then if we need to develop, we need to focus on agriculture and not just any agricultural practices or outmoded agricultural practices, but then modernized and mechanized agricultural practices. Now, when it comes to that, I ask myself, then how do we do it? That is where the youth will come in. So the role of the youth, then we come in. Now we are in the age whereby agriculture, we need to seriously mechanize agriculture. And then if you say that it should start from my grandfather, you are making a mistake. Because if you go into this precision farming services and all those issues, you cannot start from my grandfather. My grandfather doesn't know much about it. And so this is the time that we, the youth, need to own this process. Go into agriculture, adapt this precision farming services, adapt this mechanized farming services. That being said, talking about inclusion, we need not leave everybody out. We need to also focus on the role of each and every person, especially women. You know, studies have shown that when women go into agriculture, you know, the poverty, you know, there's reduction in poverty. Rate, yes, all those things. So we need to go into that, check a lot of things in agriculture system, land tenure systems, land ownership, all those things we need to take into consideration. If you come to Africa, our land is owned basically by, you know, men, and then the women need to support. But this needs to change.
But is it still the same?
No, it's still the same. Mostly it's the house head that owns the land. The woman, you know, joins, but the system needs to change. Women should be able to own their own land. They need to be able to, you know, go into agriculture, and then, you know, it's going to reduce poverty. And then through that, we are going to get the development that we so much need in Africa.
Okay, let me get to Mr.
Yes.
Japan, especially talking about agriculture.
Yes.
A lot of us, I don't know how many of us are willing to go into agriculture. Looking at how agriculture has been packaged for us as a continent, how can we inspire a lot of our young people to take advantage of the growing trends of how we are kind of mechanized agriculture, and then ensure that we are able to feed ourselves, we are able to even export and then get some revenue to develop our continent.
Okay, thank you very much, Kwesi. So, Ankoma made mention of the fact that our land tenure system needs to be reviewed, and ownership of land in Africa needs to be looked at very carefully if we want to mechanize agriculture. So you move into, let me use Ghana as an example. You go into maybe Volta region, and the land there is not for one person, or it belongs to a whole family, and you see that the plot of land in there, all the acres available to me will be just maybe one. Whilst if you go elsewhere, one person can farm more than 10 acres. So that needs to be looked at. If a family land, then there should be a situation whereby there can be leases of land, whereby one person can farm more than 3 acres, 4 acres, 5 acres. You understand? And also there need to be education, more education, or to mechanize agriculture. Our technological institution, our research institution needs to focus on building more machines, and then removing the outmoded form of farming from our system. I'm not happy to say that a lot of farming practices in Ghana use the hoe and the cutlass, which is way outmoded.
The simple farm tools.
The simple farm tools. So what are our students, what are our lecturers who are doing what agricultural engineering doing? You understand? What happened to building machines, post-harvest machines and all these things to help our agricultural system in Africa? It needs to suit our system so that we can be able to move into full mechanization of agriculture. So one, we need to look at our non-tenure system, the way ownership of land is being done in Africa, and two, how to build machines to support these movements into mechanization of agriculture.
To add to this, as he talked about the reason why it's important to mechanize agriculture and all the necessary equipment. And when you look at this, it's not far-fetched. Looking at the technical vocational education, these are people who are cut out for such programs, for such innovations. And so if this sector of education is well-equipped, is well-financed, I think they would be the right people we can consult when it comes to agriculture. But it seems they have been left behind. Nobody is interested in the technical and vocational education. There are some countries, and when you go to Japan, when you go to China, they are the ones making the country grow more, because they are the ones on the ground doing the practical stuff, giving them the machines to do their work. It's not same in Africa. We can't boast of a TVET institution that are making agriculture machineries. We can't boast of any TVET institution that is making use of what they have, because first of all, they are under-resourced. So we have to get it from there. We have to pick it from there. See the importance, see their essence. They can make chairs, they can make tables. We don't need always to import from outside. We can get it done here.
So is it okay?
And also, agricultural education needs to be made attractive. You know, as time goes on, our current educational system, and I'm fortunate to be at AAU, and then I've been able to analyze the trend of enrollments according to program basis. And then the result that keeps coming up is that there's been a plummeted decline in the agricultural colleges in Ghana. For example, I'm basing it on Ghana because the pilot project is in Ghana here. And you could see that as time goes on, the enrollment, enrollment in agri keeps on going down. And then you see that enrollment in humanities and business keeps going up. You understand? Now we have graduate unemployment just because of the way they were educated.
Okay.
They took the path of business and humanities, and these sectors are choked. The financial sectors are not employing that much. What happened to the agricultural sector? Make it attractive. Make people be intrigued to go into agric, and we will have results.
I think the African Development Bank is doing fantastically well with their High Five project, where they have a lot of dreams and aspirations of making sure that they support a lot of farmers in Africa with farm implementation tools and other equipment, so that we'll be able to farm and then feed ourselves. Because it's so amazing that, and sometimes a bit shameful to just talk about the things that we import as a continent.
Rice.
Things that rice, for it, because we have the land, we have all the resources, we can grow rice, we can grow food for ourselves. But the problem is, are we ready to accept what we have as a continent?
Okay. Kwesi, it's not like we are not ready to accept what we have. We are ready to accept it, but then are we ready to work for it? That is the question we ask ourselves. We would like a continent where we do not import rice anymore, but then we produce rice. We do not want to import some of the basic agriculture stuff. We need to have it on our own, produce it on our own. So I wouldn't say, what I would say is we need to kind of do, work for it.
Okay.
And so when it comes to agriculture, for instance, we are talking about the fact that how can we make it lucrative and all those things. One thing I'm looking at is, most of the land is in the rural areas. Now, the youth are migrating from the rural areas
to
the urban areas. What is here? And then what is not there? And that is making them move.
Okay.
Sometimes you can look at it in the form of internet, technology, lighting.
Making life better for ourselves.
Those are some of the things that they fancy in the urban areas that makes them move. So if that is the case, then let's send all those things to the rural areas, and then they can stay there. So give them light, give them internet, and all those things. And then they'll feel better in the rural areas, stay there, and then go into agriculture. If not that, we will be in a country whereby the youth, the energetic ones who are supposed to stay in the rural areas to farm, will intend moving to the urban areas where there are no jobs. So we need to really work.
Let me quickly jump in.
Yes, just jump in so that I can go for a quick commercial break.
Okay. Okay. So you asked the question that why is it that we don't want what we produce?
Sure.
Yes. It's a major issue that we need to tackle. Our taste and preference has become foreign, which is something that we need to address. There's one particular dialect, or let me say food, that we produce in the northern part of Africa. Let's say in the northern part of Ghana and in the southern part of Burkina, and also in the northern of Nigeria. This food is called a fonio, which is very nutritious and it's really healthy. It's used as it can be used as rice. It has the texture of rice and also can be used as porridge and all that. Interestingly, this food is being exported, and the people who need to eat this food are not actually eating it. So we have to tackle the issue of taste and preference before we move on to, okay, let's produce more.
All right.
What if we produce and then there's no demand for it?
Great.
Yes.
I think you hold your breath and let me go for a quick commercial break. When I come back, we'll look at some of the trending issues. Viewers, this is AAU Talks here on AAU TV, and we are discussing the Agenda 2063 and the role that young people play in ensuring that in the next 50 years, this agenda is achievable. We'll go for a quick commercial break, and when we come back, my guests are here to still do justice to the subject. Stay with us.
I feel so confident. The reason why I feel so confident, it's not because of maybe the courses just that I've been doing. I feel like I can do anything that I want to do. If you tell me to do something, even if I don't know how to do it, I'll learn, I'll take my time, I'll study hard, I'll probably not sleep for a month, but I'll do it because that's what Carnegie Mellon University have taught me, to work hard, to read hard, to spend more hours doing research, and then at the end of the
Welcome back from that commercial break, and this is AAU Talks here on AAU TV. And before we left off for the commercial break, we're discussing the Agenda 2063 and the role of the young people in ensuring that we are able to make it achievable by the next 50 years. And let me get back to you, Mr. Ajapong, looking at the second aspiration, which talks about an integrated continent, a continent that is well integrated, both politically and also based on the ideals of Pan-Africanism and an African Renaissance. How do we, and then in an era where a lot of us don't even pride ourselves in what we have, in an era where a lot of our young people want to move out of the continent to the other continent to seek for greener pastures, how do we make this possible in the next 50 years?
Okay. Thank you very much, Kwesi. In order to make this possible, that the second aspiration possible, which is talking about an integrated Africa, there is a need to have a borderless Africa. An Africa where there's free mobility of capital and also human resources. So if we have an Africa where I can move from, let's say, Nigeria to Kenya to go and work without going through all these documentation, and you have to be paying all these, without all these barriers. That's one way of having an integrated Africa.
And I think we've done well with that, especially in the ECOWAS region.
Yes.
You don't need a visa to travel, and even some of the Eastern African regions as well.
Yes, it is in the ECOWAS sub-region, but it's been what's the name? What word would I? Okay, let me say it's been suppressed by the issue of corruption on our borders. So, yes, it's in books that I can move freely from Ghana to Togo or from Togo to Nigeria. But you go there and they say, oh, you don't speak our language, so you need to pay something. And it happens at our borders, always. If you are moving a good from Nigeria to Ghana, yes, it is. You can move it from there. You don't need a visa. You don't need much documentation. But the element of corruption that is over there, the element of corruption needs to be removed. You understand? Yes. Right. But also looking at the other part of Africa, let's say you're going to Rwanda, you're going to Botswana, it's a bit difficult because of the documentation that you need. There are some barriers in there. So it doesn't promote an integrated Africa where goods and labor can move freely across the continent. Yes, which needs to be looked at by our leaders and also to a greater extent by ourselves.
And I think I love Rwanda. Rwanda is free to everybody on the continent. You can go to Rwanda freely so far as you are on the African continent. And I think we need to do more. It's a bit difficult in the Southern African region. The SADC region is a bit difficult.
Yes.
And then also when you go to
the Northern Africa
region is also difficult. But I think we can get there.
We will get there.
But looking at we having a continent that is politically united, and you know Africa is one of the continents with a lot of language barriers. How do we get that done? United politically and also united, making sure that ideas of Pan-Africanism, we are so much one, and then we fight for one common goal, one common agenda.
Let's go back, go down memory lane when Dr. Kwame Nkrumah had on his vision to unite Africa, have one Africa with states like the USA. This was something that was so important to him because he knew what a united front could achieve. He knew what, when Africa is together, what we could get from that. A united Africa where we understand we have a basic principle, we have basic ideologies, but culturally and everything, we are independent because we can't all merge into one. We already have our differences. But in terms of politics, we could somehow have a solid idea, a solid background as to this is what we want to do. Because a solid USA, United States of America, has a large economy because everyone makes their input and they bring it together. But we are doing things on our own, separately, in our own small ways, in silos. And that doesn't help. Free movement, we can't get it anywhere. It's only part of West Africa where we have free movement. Goods and services can travel. Continental free trade areas. We are finding it difficult to even implement in our countries, in our constitutions, to allow people to move about, to allow services, goods to move about. We can't do that because everybody wants to be a boss. Everybody wants to be, I'm the president of this country.
Okay.
I'm not willing to give out my sovereignty for us to come together. But we should look at the bigger picture. And the bigger picture is that when we are together, we could achieve more than we being individualistic.
Okay. But are you not sure that it is also because of this, the security threat, opening my border to everyone to come in? It's not because of the security.
Exactly. When we talk about that is the more reason why it's even important as a continent to come together. I don't think Comoros has this standing army that can fight threats. I don't think those small countries have a good standing army to fight threats. But when you look at Nigeria, when you look at Ghana, they have the population, they have the military equipment, they have the techniques and knowledge to help fight it together. And we are not able to fight terrorism because of our knowledge in counter-terrorism. It's like it's a delicate information hidden. Everything is hidden in Africa, so it's not open for everyone to know. Egypt is fighting terrorism. They have a wide scope on how to do it, but they wouldn't bring it down to Nigeria for Nigeria to able to deal with their Boko Haram, because everybody is different, everybody is sovereign. But this is the point where we need to be together. This is the point where we need to come together as a continent, fight our battles. We can't wait for the UN to bring their armies to come fight for us. It is our battle. We know our terrain and we know how we can deal with that. So it is important as the continent to be united in any way, politics, security-wise, economic-wise. It is necessary that we have that in place.
Are you proud as an African, Mr. Ankoma?
I'm very proud.
Looking at this Pan-Africanism and everything.
I'm very proud as an African, you know.
What makes you proud?
You know, the fact that we have a unique culture, we have everything, we have all the advantages, you know, on our continent, you know, to, you know, come together and form a global force. You know, that is one unique thing that makes me proud as an African. And then also, you know, since 1963, you know, the quest for African unity, you know, has been based on the spirit of Pan-Africanism.
Exactly.
You know, we need to have this faith, this belief. We need to be self-reliant. We need to, you know, be liberal. Know that we can do it on our own.
Exactly.
That is the spirit of Pan-Africanism. And I have that spirit. So I'm proud to be an African. You know, I believe that when we come together, we will become a major force to reckon with. But then that is not what we are doing. Politically, we are divided. You know, you go to every country, they have their unique set of things, how they do their own things, and they feel like, okay, I'm not willing to, you know, give up that. Yeah, but then that is not the case. We need to come together in unity, and then together we become a global force to reckon with. You know, right now, the youth coming up, we ask ourselves, are we, you know, the question you ask me, am I proud as an African? Are the youth proud as Africans? Or we are, you know, we fancy this Western culture, Western and ideologies. You see, that is even affecting the country, and that has led to the issue of this migration. Some people moving out of the continent to this Western world to seek greener pastures. They've lost the spirit of Pan-Africanism. They've lost the hope in the region that we can do things on our own. But that is not the case. We should bring it back and then believe that we can do it.
Great.
Now we are running away to these Western worlds because we do not believe in our country. We are not self-reliant. But then we should know that the youth, we are moving away. It's a fight we are running away from. We live to fight it another day. Great. So we need to fight it now.
That's amazing. Let me get to you, because this is very much interesting and we discuss it every day.
Yes.
And I think I posed a question some time ago, that why is it that all these Western countries and the other continent are opening their countries to their brilliant people on our continent in the form of giving them scholarships, grants to go out to study. And you know, any young person you speak to in Africa, after senior high school or after first degree, they wouldn't want to school again in Africa, thinking that the education system is not good. They want to move out. They are in a haste to move out. How do we develop this continent if the young people have that kind of inner drive and quest to run away or move out because things are not working? How do we get it done?
Well, it still has to do with creating the jobs here for them. So if I'm
young
a
people
trained,
can create jobs themselves.
Yes, young people can create jobs themselves. Yes, very true. But we have different kinds of entrepreneurship, and I think we've talked about this in detail on this same set the last time that we were here.
Okay.
So entrepreneurship is key, yes, but there is also the need for an entrepreneur that will create, will employ multiple jobs. So we don't need an entrepreneur who is focused on, okay, let me do buy and selling, and it ends there. Entrepreneurship that will bring about employing more than 1 or 2 people. Okay. That is one thing that we need. So, and then let me come back to your question again. So in order to make Africa attractive, and also for people to want to stay in the country or in the various countries and not to move out of the country, is to make the country a good place to live. And how do you do this? Rule of law is key. When people within the country can afford or can have access to rule of law, and there is a respect of law in the country.
Right.
One, it helps build the institutions, and 2, it also help reduce the issue of corruption and all that. So in a country whereby the systems are working, I wouldn't want to go out of the country, because in a country where systems are working, definitely you have good water supply, you have good electricity, you have good education and all that. People move out of the country because of these things. And if these things are made available in our various countries, yes, of course, the youth are going to stay.
Yes, let me come to you, Ms. Addai. Currently, these things are not existing, and young people would want to travel out because they watch them on internet and what have you. They want to move out. How, if all our brainy people are moving out of the continent, who will be left here to make sure that at the end of the day we would get the things that and be proud of ourselves as Africans? How will young people come to the realization that, look, the continent is ours, and we need to stay and build it. We need to stay and make it better?
I think, first of all, we shouldn't underrate some of the things that have been put in place in terms of scholarship in Africa. I think many of them are there for Africa, for Africans to move in Africa. And I think we can't look beyond that. I think it's a work in progress that is being done. But I think more of it could be done. I think, first of all, we need a solid system. As I said, we need a solid system, a system where when we know this is set up, this is what I know when I finish high school, this is where I'm going. There is an internship here for me to do. I can stay here for a month doing this before I go back to school. And even if I'm not ready, I'm not taken into the mainstream universities and all of that, there are other colleges where I can be taken. Okay. And when we make this attractive, when we know that when we finish our schools, there are jobs available for us. Mostly that has been the problem, because everyone is thinking when I bring a certificate from outside, I get a better job than my friend who has schooled in Africa. I think there should be a standard that this is equal to this. A certificate from Africa is equal to a certificate from outside. We should make it attractive. We should respect what we have. I think that is the problem. We don't respect what we have. We underrate what we have. When we have these standards equal to that of the Europeans, equal to those outside and the developed countries, then we have the basic ground for everybody. The competition, the level is grounded.
Okay.
Everybody can go through that. And then I know that when I finish school, this with my certificate, I can compete. But how can I compete with someone in Oxford? You get it? There should be a way that our education system, that is what I'm saying, our systems should be of good quality. If the quality is not there, I would move out.
Sure.
I'm patriotic, but I want something better for myself. And so we have to put more in giving out quality education, quality economic systems, quality road infrastructure, ICT, tourism, everything that makes Africa pleasant. Let me put it that way.
And even attract people
and
to
attract people to come this way. Someone should come from outside to come and study here. It shouldn't always be we going for exchange programs. No.
Which they do sometimes.
They do. But we should be here because we don't have value on our certificate. We don't have value on our education system or everything.
And that is problematic.
That is the problem.
Okay, let me get to you.
You see, Kwame Nkrumah.
Something is better with you.
Kwame Nkrumah, who is one of the Pan-Africanist people we have. He's one of the leaders of Pan-Africanism.
Yeah.
He went outside on a scholarship, didn't he?
Yes, but when he came back.
He came back.
That is a problem.
That is it. So the
whilst we are
talking,
talking,
that we the youth, we do not have the spirit of Pan-Africanism. We need to have that spirit of Pan-Africanism. You go out there, you acquire knowledge,
and you come back home.
You come back home, then come and apply it.
And
here.
what is the sense of going when I can get the same quality education here?
But this
is the point.
This is a situation we don't have this quality education.
And that is why we are striving to
honestly,
be.
on any day,
we can build.
People will want to go to Harvard, MIT, Oxford.
Why?
And what have you? Because of the standards that they are
Exactly.
given.
This is the standards we are talking
the
about.
The University of Ghana, University of Kenya, and the University of Cape Town is giving such standards. Why not?
Why not?
Why won't we stay in here? So it still comes back into building good institutions.
Yes.
It still comes back to giving good services in terms of streets, in terms of electricity, internet, technology. Everything.
You know something I find, I wouldn't get the right word, so I say embarrassing when applying to schools outside. You know, someone who has been taught English from kindergarten is expected to write an English test before they could get admission into schools. Why? But no one in their country is asked of an English. Even English is our official language.
Sure.
You are still supposed to write. Why are we still doing this? Isn't Africa enough for us?
So we should believe in our own.
Exactly. That is the whole point.
That is the whole issue of Pan-Africanism.
The problem is because we don't believe in ourselves. Let's use a very good example of the Kantaka vehicles that we have here in Ghana. How many of us will pick money and purchase such a vehicle, which has some, I don't want to use some kind of standard, but it's equally competitive.
Developed to the specs of Africa.
If I'm giving for free, I'll take.
Want for free. Exactly. But we have some kind of, just as Sami said earlier, we have foreign taste for everything, or we have taste for foreign things. And I think it's just a mindset that we need to change. Otherwise, in the few years to come, all our young people will run out of the continent and will be left with the older people.
If they run out, they should come back at least.
All right. Now, let's move on further. You know, I don't know whether you've listened to Patrice Lumumba, who makes a statement that Africa is on a dinner table, and then we have the Chinese, we have the Europeans, we have the Americans, we have the other people, as in the other continent, coming on to devour Africa. Just because we don't believe in ourselves, just because we don't trust in what we can do. We have nothing to show as a continent. We don't have any bargaining right. We don't have any, I don't know, what is exactly the problem? Because trust me, if you're talking about better and quality education, we have a lot in Africa. If you're talking about systems, we have some good systems in Africa. But why, or what is exactly the challenge? Mr. Japon.
Well, what is exactly the challenge? I could list a lot, but let me just hit on one point, which is corruption. Then my fellow panelists will also look at
been mentioned.
So yes,
over and over.
It's really eating us up, and if there is a model that could analyze the share or the amount of money that Africa loses because of corruption, that would be great, because we lose a lot of money in the name of corruption. Just corruption alone, I think Harvard has done such study, or some other universities have done such a study, and then the amount of money that we lose because of corruption
annually is about $1.2 billion
yes.
or so.
And it's
yet we wait for Harvard to make this for us,
and
analysis for
interestingly, it's not being made by ourselves. Other foreigners do this analysis for us as if they are here with us. You understand? There are lots of bribery going on in the institutions, our ministries, our football federations, and all that. It's really huge, which we need to look at.
I think we are running out of time.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I know when I give you the opportunity, there are a lot of things you can share.
Yes.
But I think there should be a second part of this because it's very broad. 7
Yes.
aspirations we can discuss within the space of 1 hour. But let me take a final word. How can we ensure that we have Africans or the young people in Africa are proud of the continent and they appreciate and love what they want? I love Africa and I want to make Africa better. How can we ensure that that is done? I will start with you, Mr. Ankoma.
Kwesi, I want to
Based
focus
on the 2 aspirations that we've discussed.
Yes, I want to focus on the youth. You know, we as the youth, we need to believe in ourselves, be models of change to cause a change on the continent. The older generations will give us the opportunity. How do we make use of the opportunity? How do we justify that we can cause a change or we can develop the Africa we want? We, the youth, should be models of change. Okay. If you are given the mantle, let's say going outside to study on a scholarship, go there, study, bring whatever you acquire to Africa. The opportunities are here for you to develop more than you can get out there. So we, the youth, need to take the issues on and then develop our continent.
Thank you very much. Ms. Addai?
the Africa I want Africa where I will not go to vacation in the US. I want to go to the Seychelles. I want somewhere
go to Benin?
No, I want Seychelles. They have beautiful islands. I want somewhere it would be peaceful. I just want to wake up and go to Egypt without thinking Egypt is too dangerous for me to go. That means I'm talking about a peaceful, coexisting Africa. I want Africa where institutions work. Africa where I can make a complaint and not feel this is going to be ignored. I want an Africa where the economy is good, where as a student coming up, I'm thinking, where am I going to get a job to do? That is the Africa that I want, an inclusive, growing Africa, where everyone is included in it, where economies are strong, politically we are there, tourism-wise, everything is in place. That is the Africa I want.
Thank you very much, Mr. Japan. I don't know why I keep on calling you Mr. Ankoma.
Okay, so the Africa that I want is an integrated Africa, an Africa whereby we drive our own change and our own development, an Africa where we are very united in terms of culture, in terms of bringing aside our diversity and all that. An Africa where we have positive attitude towards things.
Thank you very much, my great panelists. It's been insightful 1 hour discussing the Africa that we want, especially the role that the young people can play. And then I know that we'll constitute the same panel for the second session, where we'll discuss the third, the fourth, the fifth, sixth, and the seventh aspiration. And I know that you have quality and good information to share with our viewers.
Yes.
Thank you so much for the time. All right, so viewers, this is where time will permit us to stay with you on AAU Talks here on AAU TV. It's been insightful hosting Mr. Schenineda Ankoma, Ms. Irene Addai Dufie, and then Mr. Samuel Japan. They've shared with us insightful thought on how young people can take over the African continent and make sure that we implement Agenda 2063 by the next 50 years. It is possible. It is possible because you are ready to play your part. It is possible because you are prepared to be a patriotic citizen. You are prepared to be a Pan-African person and ensuring that we have nothing but the best. The Africa we want is possible. See you same time next week for the insightful editions ahead. My name is Kwesi Sam, and this has been AAU Talks.